Because self-consciousness means I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of myself talking to Mark, for example. Or I'm just talking to Mark, but I'm not aware of myself talking to Mark. I'm just talking to Mark.
Mm-hmm.
So egoic self consciousness would be, I'm aware of myself talking to Mark, which is that's duality, that's two. Whereas I'm just talking to Mark, there's only one. So self-consciousness can be a sign of ego, and it can be very disconcerting. When people are very self-conscious, it creates kind of discomfort in the observer. So in other words, if you were very self-conscious, you're very relaxed. Like, and we're being together, and you're very relaxed in yourself, which makes me relaxed being with you.
Yeah, let's explore some more into that topic, because I feel that's also very, very interesting to many people, because this is another paradox. You mentioned this self-consciousness. It's so important, and one symptom of when we're submerged in mass psychology, when we're part of a big crowd, we tend as human beings to become unaware of what's going on inside of us. We become so hypnotized, brainwashed, like um and so we lose that. And then on the other hand, like, I feel what many people what creates them to be seekers in the first place is they feel self-consciousness, but they feel at first they feel like alienated, like, I'm different, what am I doing here? I am an alien on Earth, this is the wrong planet. and and so then they tend not to stay with self-consciousness, but with self-centeredness.
Yes,
And so
terrible.
that this self-centeredness is completely different thing, right? Than self-consciousness.
You're talking about narcissism, right?
Yeah,
So,
I heard from you 7 years ago. I heard from you a statement which I have never heard before anywhere, but it makes perfect sense, that the ego loves to separate itself from the crowd, you know,
yes,
in order to put itself together again, you know.
loves to see itself as being separate and superior.
Yes, separate, superior, and then it can come up with another story, another self-image, whatever. When it's, even while meditating, let's so-called meditation or retreat, and then it doesn't let go oftentimes, but how I say, to reinstate itself. And this is like a walk on razor's edge. So how
Well,
can I, how
I think the worst.
for the
I think
seeker? Hmm?
exactly, but I think the motivation in what you're describing, that I was saying, my understanding is that there's a dark motivation in the ego, and the dark motivation is to always be able to see oneself as separate and superior to the other, the others, the world, and the whole universe. The ego can only see itself as standing separate and apart from. So in order for the ego to be able to see itself, self-consciousness, small self-consciousness, it needs to see itself as being separate. And when it can see itself as being separate and superior, it feels confident. But if I'm just, for example, if I'm just simply, Mark, if I'm simply just with you and not watching myself be with you, and if you're simply with me but not watching yourself be with me, I'm not standing in a separated place, and therefore I have no sense of being superior or better than you. And you the same with me. But now then we're just together. We're just fully together and fully giving ourselves to each other's attention. So I think the dark motivation in the ego's need to see itself as being separate has to do with a dark sense of superiority. It might be unconscious. It's feeling better than it's superior to the other. Because
Yeah, the way I see it,
sorry.
sorry, when we are really together like this, it's like you're shining your light onto me, and it even enhances
Yeah.
in that oneness, it still enhances this self-awareness, right? It's not either or. It's like we help each other, but in a crowd where the many egos gather, they don't so much shine a light on the other, right?
No, they don't. But if this because the ego's motive to remain separate is very profound, very powerful, very deeply embedded in our consciousness. And it's a big thing to become aware of it, and it's a big, even bigger thing to transcend it. Because for me to give up this need to see myself as being separate from you, in order to protect my self-image, my self-image, I have to feel, I have to have a fearless self-confidence. I have to believe in myself and believe in my own inherent worthiness. Whether you or anybody else validates it or not, there needs to be a ferocious and a fearless self-confidence. And we need to be resting in that. And we don't need to push other people away in order to feel whole. But a lot of people are afraid of intimacy, vulnerability, transparency, and authenticity. I teach interior here. I teach for 3 months in the winter. And there are these two guys that were coming every day. One guy was German, the other guy was Swiss. Very sweet, middle-aged men. They're both very sweet, kind, intelligent, respectful, earnest, sincere. And we just had a nice connection, very warm and loving. And after I was finished teaching, I'd go sit outside and people could come and talk to me if they wanted to. And it was funny. And one day I was sitting out there and they came up, they came separately and they said, Andrew, I'm scared. You scare me to death. I said, what happened? I said, what did I do? They said, you didn't do anything. And I think it was, I was laughing. I said, well, what did I do? Because I think that there's this, when we allow ourselves to transcend the ego and become truly vulnerable, truly unprotected, there's an openness. We feel an openness and a vulnerability to which we're calling others to join us, to enter into the same state of vulnerability with us, so we can be together in that ecstatic, empty vulnerability. And for the ego, it scares it to death. So both of these guys were very attracted and very scared at the same time. And I was laughing because all I experienced with them was kindness and sweetness. But I think my openness and my vulnerability and my simplicity of it was scaring them. You know, Nisargadatta Maharaj, of course, don't you? So he said something very interesting once. He said, there's some famous line that goes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You've heard that kind of thing. Either when the student's ready, the teacher will
Is
appear.
this by him? I didn't know that. I
No,
know.
no way. He said something different. What he said is, he said the guru. He said, you think you're looking for the guru, but the guru is always looking for you. He said the guru is always looking for you. So he's describing that open vulnerability I was speaking about, that seeking for its own self-recognition in others. Because one of the things I've noticed is that consciousness, whatever consciousness is, delights in its own self-recognition. So I'm sure you've had this experience with other people and groups of people, that when somebody wakes up, waking up is when consciousness awakens to itself, becomes aware of itself. Consciousness itself seems to delight in its own self-recognition. So consciousness itself is seeking to be realized, to be recognized by us. Consciousness is seeking it, like, does he recognize me? Does he see me? And it's hard for the rational it's hard for the rational mind to understand this, but consciousness itself, it seems, this is not, doesn't make rational sense, but metaphysically it works this way. The consciousness is seeking for us to recognize it. There's a mysterious quality the nature of consciousness itself, whereas it's seeking for its own self-recognition, it wants us to awaken. The universe, there is a momentum in the subtle realm. There seems to be a momentum in the cosmos at the level of consciousness, for consciousness to awaken to itself or recognize itself. And this momentum is self-existing. And when we realize this, we realize, oh, we're not alone. We're not alone in our seeking process. We're not alone in our dark night of the soul. We're not alone, but there are forces that are trying to help us. That self exists inherently in nature itself, and that would be the force of consciousness itself that's seeking for its own self-recognition. And again, these things are hard to believe unless you have the experience. When you have the experience, oh, now I understand. If you don't have the experience, it just sounds crazy, but it's not. So the recognition that consciousness is trying to awaken to itself through us, and the seeking for its own self-recognition through us, gives us an enormous amount of spiritual self-confidence, confidence in the absolute, or confidence in the absolute principle, the God principle. But we need to have these kinds of experiences to be convinced. And once we have and it's powerful enough experiences to be convinced, then we can, as we were discussing, we can let go. And we can live the spiritual life in earnest and try to be exemplars. Because if I can express spiritual self-confidence, that God is real, that enlightenment exists, it's possible to be free, it's possible to be beautiful. And you realize the same thing. And we're willing to stand in that realization in public as exemplars of the possible. It makes other people feel, oh, well, if he can do it convincingly, then maybe I can do it too. And then we can help each other take that mysterious step beyond the known. No?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was something crossing my mind, but I don't remember. Yeah, I agree completely. We're on the same page here.
Fantastic.
Yes.
It feels that way. We better not be too much on the same page, otherwise we might stop talking.
No. Wonderful, wonderful.
That's okay. Okay, good.
Uh,
Sometimes I teach online mostly these days, but sometimes when I'm stopped talking, nobody says anything. We just like, they say, okay, goodbye.
that's perfect. I just had an interview recently at a conference, online conference, and but actually the two last interviews, the last interview, the interview couldn't ask any more questions because it was just
His mind was blown.
blown blank and so on, no questions. And the interview before, I mean, I have the recording as well. The interview just she was just saying all the time, I feel so blissful, there's so much love, I don't know what to say. It was going on for minutes, and in the end I had to wrap it up and say, okay guys, if you want to be part of this congress and you want to buy the whole package and so on, because she was that was really interesting. Yeah.
Called the questionless state. The questionless state, the question-free state.
Yeah, now I remember what so it's hard to imagine, but we're actually also doing that shift from believing to
Knowing.
knowing. Although it may not be perfect, the knowing becomes deeper and deeper. And of course, that's also very persuasive for some people. If someone speaks with this knowing, so that's very unusual. Like the observer may think, oh, that's odd. He or she doesn't seem to have a doubt in his mind. There is no second thoughts. There's nothing, and that's very, very unusual. And so, like like you said, the self-confidence, I feel like even that is not of my own. That's also God-given.
Exactly.
When I ask God, God, do you believe in me? Do you trust in me? Then I get the answer 100%, fully, absolutely, without a doubt. And so, so that dissolves all self-doubt or whatever, but not because I want to get rid of it, but because the divine will just takes it away. You don't need this.
That's the best when that happens.
Yeah.
My guru said that the state of enlightenment, the state of inner freedom was the result of no doubt. So when there's no doubt, no doubt is freedom. So he made it clear to me that the state of enlightenment is not a state of consciousness where there's always the presence of a bliss vibration or a particular kind of feeling of any kind. It's nothing to do with feeling any particular way, which a lot of people are very preoccupied with how they feel all the time. He said it has nothing to do with how you feel. He said it's having no doubt. Just as you described, no doubt whatsoever. No doubt is unconditional freedom. Now, a lot of people, a lot of postmodernists hear that and they say, "You mean I'm not allowed to doubt?" I said, "No, I didn't say you're not allowed to doubt. I'm saying if you want to be free, you have to go beyond doubt. You have to be doubtless about the ultimate nature of the truth itself." And it's by transcending the doubt and relinquishing it in the way you've been describing that we find that the perfection we were speaking about, or the wholeness, is always already there.
It can only be done, like you said, by vulnerability, by sensitivity. The more sensitive I become, I feel any kind of friction. So when there's any kind of friction, it means something is not completely truthful. It's not completely honest. And then in that respect, the doubt even serves. From my perspective, if there's a doubt, don't just push it away, don't just forget it, but that's also being seen by consciousness and helping to see, okay, something is off, something's odd, because there's a doubt. So the doubt helps me to look into whatever subject or matter even more deeply. And by that, the doubt is dissolved, right?
Yeah,
By the ego not wanting to doubt. The ego the ego hates doubting, but it's even that is constructive.
well, the way I would put it would be to say that when I say no doubt, it means no doubt about the absolute, no doubt about the existence of the perfection of the absolute and perfection of God. At all times, in all places, for all circumstances, no doubt. I have no doubt about that. But that's not to say that of course, we can have all kinds of doubt and skepticism and curiosity and about all relative matters. We can doubt the veracity and the truth of them. That's a different level, and that's fine.
Right, yeah.
But then in terms of the enlightenment, the no doubt has to be about the nature of God, the nature of the absolute, the nature of enlightenment itself. We have to be doubtless about that. One time when I visited my teacher, and I hadn't seen him in a while, I came in the room, he said, "Andrew, I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see."
Can you say that again? I'm so happy you found a friend. No.
"Andrew, I'm so happy you found a friend you'll never be able to see."
Okay. That friend. Okay.
I'm so glad you found a friend you'll never be able to see. So if I found a friend I'll never be able to see, the only way for me to know he's always there is to never doubt it. But if I'm looking for him, I'll never see him because he's always already there. Because he's me anyway. So you
Right.
can't see your own self.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing that this which we cannot see is more real than anything we can
Exactly.
see.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm in the very, very unusual position like that I had my, let's say, enlightenment when I was 8 or 9 years old. When,
Wow.
when I came to see this we're talking about now, like in a dreamless sleep,
Wow.
I woke up and all the knowledge was there, but but my mind back then and that at that age couldn't really make sense of it. So I was really just freaking out and running away from it.
Well,
You know,
8 years old is pretty young to make sense of such a thing.
yeah, I I just couldn't. And what I ended up with at that young age was the conclusion. Okay, so I'm indestructible. I have always been. I'm never going to die. But I thought I have a problem because I cannot take my consciousness with me because I experienced the absolute and there's no consciousness there. It's just being without consciousness, just like before the light. People are always looking for the light, but like I find that God is actually awaiting us in the darkest darkness, right? Like where the ego will never look for it. And so it freaked me out. And one more thing, as a boy, I came up with the idea I have to stop time, but I don't know how to stop time.
Wow. Wow.
I don't know how. So this took me another 20 years to realize what that actually means, to really
Wow.
in this moment, absolutely in this moment, that this is the way to stop time. I just had the idea I have to stop time, but how?
When did you figure it out?
Yeah, 20 years later, 25 years later, maybe 25 years later. Because I found that to be absolutely in this moment is the bravest thing one can do.
Yes, true. You mean in pure, totally vulnerable and open, undefended.
Take no
Interesting.
thought of tomorrow.
That's
Yeah.
that's where reality exists, no? Exactly, powerful.
Yeah,
Pretty
so it took me another 25 years to really, really, really in depth digest this. That's crazy. So also then I realized that what everybody's looking for, like the absolute, like I realized back then and I was running from it.
it
And so
sounds like
I thought,
it
so I
sounds
thought,
like
okay, now I know why almost nobody finds it, because it was so scary to me as a boy. Like they say, the ultimate disappointment, right?
sounds like the absolute found you. You didn't find it.
Yeah, it found me. Yeah, absolutely. There was no intention.
Mark, I think I heard when I was younger that in the Eastern traditions they say that they believe in the continuity of consciousness from life to life or the process of reincarnation. So I'm an evolutionary, so I believe in the continuity of consciousness because I think that the material universe is part of a continuity of is part of a developmental continuity, right?
Right.
Energy and matter that's giving rise to the material universe is part of developmental continuity. So matter and energy from an integral perspective is the outside of the universe, and the inside of the same universe is subjectivity, interiority, or consciousness. So it makes sense that if the outside of the universe is part of a continuity, it makes sense that the inside of the universe is equally a part of that same continuity. But it makes sense that we've all been here the whole time in different forms. In other words, in Vedanta, they tell us that the ultimate truth about the nature of reality is that there's only one and not two. And that's when they say, I am that, I am that. So I honestly, so we've been talking about the nature of emptiness. You brought that up again. And I'm sure that you've noticed as in your own work as teaching that the awakening to non-duality or to the truth, the nature of emptiness is very subtle. It's a subtle insight. It's a subtle cognition, a subtle understanding. And it's one that some people, and maybe in a very sacred context or retreat situation, will awaken to temporarily. They'll get it. They'll say, oh, they'll have a kensho and they'll understand. Then the retreat will end, and then a few days later they'll forget. They won't remember. They won't have access anymore. So it seems that it's much easier to awaken. It's much easier for most people to awaken, but it's much harder for most people to stay awake. Most people awaken and fall back asleep, awaken and fall back asleep. So it just seems to be the rare individual, the rarest of rare individuals who can awaken and not fall back to sleep, but can awaken and stay awake. And I believe, and this is just part of my belief system. I don't know if it's true that the people who can stay awake, the reason they can do so is because they've been at this for a much longer period of time, learning about the ultimate nature of reality through many lives and many lifetimes. I didn't used to believe that was true. I didn't think it needed to be true, but I believe that now. I think to awaken takes a long time and a lot of effort, especially when it gets to these kinds of insights and understandings that are so subtle. The subtlest of cognition is required. It requires us a long time and years and years and years and years of being busy with this to get to that point where we can become stabilized in our understanding of this truth. I was sitting with an Advaita guru here in India in Bangalore a couple of years ago. We were talking about prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma is the karma we're born with. They said they think that's karma that we're bringing with us from life to life. They said prarabdha karma is the momentum of karma that we bring with us from our past lives. So we were just talking about this, and he was sitting in front of me, and he was a powerfully enlightened guy, and we were sitting for about 3 hours facing each other, and there's a strong energetic field between us. And at a certain point, we were talking about how hard it is for people to sustain this understanding of the nature of emptiness that you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And in that minute, something very strange happened. I saw this beam of light came from over my left shoulder. It went passed between me and passed over his body beyond him. And it seemed to happen not in this dimension, but almost in another dimension. It was almost like it didn't happen, but it did. And it almost made a little like shoo. And I knew, and when this strange, subtle event happened, I knew that I'd been at this for a long time, in a way that I'd never known in my life. And it was almost like that information came with this shooting ball of light, or whatever it was. There was this strange, intuitive recognition that was the reason why I was stable. And it seemed, and because remaining awake is very difficult. So waking up is easy, staying awake is hard. And then, because I used to think I was very defiant when I was a younger teacher,
Actually, it's effortless, but it's hard to be effortless. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Every effort will you take out of it, right?
Exactly.
It's effortless, but like I don't want to disagree, just to show another
Sure.
example of a paradox, right? That this effortlessness is so for the egoic mind, it's so hard to get, so hard to grasp. As you said, it's like so subtle.
The ego can't understand. There's nothing for it to do.
It's like an eagle,
Eagle.
soaring in the sky, you could say.
Yeah.
It's really the same, without effort, without, and this wu wei, like, yeah, like the master doesn't anything and still nothing is left undone. I translated myself from the
Chinese.
yeah, see.
Well, that's the miracle of it, because that's why it's called the natural state,
Yeah.
because it's always already the case, even if we don't recognize it. So that means at a deeper level, even if we don't recognize it, it doesn't mean it's not true.
I love the way John de Reuter puts it, actually. He says, like, if we get this access to pure being, we have like to, for a second time, to learn to walk again, like a little child. So from my perspective, the reason why people keep seemingly, it's not true, but they appear to lose it, although they are not, but it's they cannot recognize it anymore, is because yeah, we have like to walk again. How does it work to let everything just flow and happen and effortlessly and without decision making like we're used to, and so on, and trust it that it really works. And it works, then we find out it works so much better. You know, it's so, like you said, the natural state, it's so much easier. Like it becomes a real secret, a real mystery. How can one ever lose it, actually? I mean, right? Because it's so much better.
Right, by forgetting that it's always the case. Well, I have this phrase, I say, well, if you want to be free, you have to be willing to jump out of an airplane without a parachute.
Yeah.
Which means you have no intention of coming back.
Okay, so now our two metaphors, they meet. You jump out of the airplane without a parachute and discover you're actually an eagle.
Exactly, exactly.
By divine grace.
Exactly. Because jumping out of an airplane means you're giving up all strategies by that point. All strategies and giving up the mind completely. It's a great adventure.
Yeah, like the Course in Miracles says, only God's plan will work.
That's beautiful. Yeah, we need a lot of God's plan right now in our planet in trouble. Our species in trouble. We need a lot of help from on high. It's a very challenging time to be alive, and there's a lot of these big questions that are harder and harder to come to terms with in such a dramatic time on this planet now.
What do you think? It may well be that as a species, we won't survive unless we, like, together, like human mankind as a whole, finds it, realize it, stays in it, lives from it.
Well, I think mankind's going to survive. We're not all going to die, but a lot of us might. Because the life conditions might just get too difficult. So we will survive. Of course, we're going to survive as a species, but I think it looks like the results of our unwillingness to take responsibility for problems that we've created are going to be dramatic. And we're not in a position to be able to do anything about it. It seems like that's what's happened. That's what we've done. We've really done it.
What do you mean? What we really done? What?
Well, because I think we have the intelligence, the common sense, the sophistication, the wherewithal to solve the problems that we've created, to solve our own problems. We've created the problems that are going to destroy so much of life on Earth. We didn't have to do that, and we also had fair warning that we could see where this was headed. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even longer, we saw in multiple levels of consciousness and culture, we saw what was happening, where we were all heading, but nobody did anything about it. And we didn't know how to come together at the highest levels in order to be able to take responsibility for these challenges and do something about them. And we're still not even doing it now. So it's pathological, pathological at a level that's just shocking. Because a lot of people are now very frightened understandably about what's happening and what the consequences are going to be for them and their family, for the human race as a whole, for life on Earth, for the biosphere, for all the species of life. It's understandable to be terrified and to be frightened, but it didn't have to be this way. But we refuse to face it. We refuse to respond. And refuse to take responsibility for it. But I feel fully convinced that had we risen to the occasion, and there's no, we still could. We could take responsibility for what we've done on a mass scale. But it's very hard for human beings to get along, to work together, and to trust each other, and to respond to these crises with self-created crises with this level of integrity and urgency. We don't have the right value. We're not working with the right values. That's the problem.
I think on the one hand, we might be forced to all work together, and on the other hand, if we see how this divine intelligence is able to manage to cope with the complexity, of the whole biosphere and everything, that's so complex. Like even the most intelligent artificial intelligence won't be able to figure it out or to simulate it or whatever in 100 years. I'm pretty much convinced. But the divine intelligence will be capable, of bringing everything into harmony. If we synchronize ourselves with this divine intelligence through us, through each of us, it will bring that harmony that's needed.
Well, that would require a remarkable amount of transformation along many different levels of consciousness in the human race.
Yeah, that would need some people opening up some academy in India, like manifesting Nirvana and so on. Like, we need more of that, right?
I agree. We need a lot more.
Yeah, we need a lot of that and bring heaven to earth.
We sure do. We sure do. We sure do so much. That's what we need to be living for right now.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that makes this talk come to a full circle, right? Like,
it feels that way.
Feels that way. That's where we started.
I've had a delightful time with you, Mark. It's been really a great pleasure and utterly effortless and deep. I've fallen into a state of spontaneous meditation speaking to you.
Yeah, thanks to everybody watching as well. And if you're interested in more topics, more questions, and so on, Andrew and I, we might continue this. We'll see. Just let us know in the comments what you feel, what you think, what you're interested in, and we'll be delighted to answer the questions. And I also will put your YouTube channel, your website, and everything you tell me also in the description section. Yeah, and we also already said we will for sure meet again when it comes to the conference Realizing God. So
I'm looking forward to that.
Another talk there to talk about that. Yeah, it was a great pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Delightful, Mark. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And I guess we'll see each other in India, actually. So that's one
reason.
Yeah.
Are you going to come this winter?
Yes. In one. Yes, probably in November, December. In January, I already have a retreat here on Tenerife, but I could come in November and December. Nothing going on there.
Fantastic.
Which I could not also do from Tiru.
That's right.
That's great.
I really appreciated the time, and I think you did a wonderful job. And you led us both along the way that's very unself-conscious and utterly natural and spontaneous in a way that I felt was very Beautiful. You put me very much at ease. I thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Many
Thank you.
hugs
Thank you.
and all the best to Daniela as well. And see you soon.
Thank you, Mark. Much love to you. Thank you.
Bye bye.